And at this stage, we cannot accurately identify the quantified impacts, but we can, well, at least identify potential channels of such impacts, and they are typically classified as a physical risk, and transition risk, and opportunities.
We still aren't sure of exactly what the impact of climate change will be on the financial system. But the direct impact of climate change will be on the operations and the financial results of corporates. And this will in turn affect the investors, insurers, and lenders who rely on these results. TCFD defines categories for climate-related risks and opportunities to corporate and put the risk into two possible categories, which are transition risks and physical risks. First, transition to a low-carbon economy will mean huge changes in regulations, technology, and market demand, which companies will have to react to in a timely manner. Second, climate change is causing more and more severe weather events, which can have big physical impact on a company's operations and financial results. However, company can also find new business opportunities in renewable energy or helping people cope with the physical effects of climate change.
And as to the physical risk, that the climate change would result in the increased frequency and severity of extreme weather events or extreme natural incidents, as well as the temperature rise, sea level rise, and the changed pattern of precipitation, etc. So those could damage the value of assets that held by the financial system as a whole. And as to the transition risks, the corporation must adapt to the new environment that we're governed by the Paris Climate Accord, which is the low carbon or zero carbon social economy. And the failing to do so would also damage the value of the assets held by the financial system. And also on the positive side, well, if a certain corporation can adapt to that new environment successfully, then it could enhance their corporate value, and which could positively affect the value of the asset held by the financial system as a whole. So that is the way that the climate change would have impact on the financial system. From the perspective of the financial supervisor, which supervises the banks and insurance companies and other financial institutions, generally speaking, that we must prevent a systemic event in the financial sector from affecting the ordinary life of the people. So such systemic risk could emerge where the financial system is commonly exposed to a certain risk. In other words, if every financial actor in the financial system would be largely exposed to one single risk factor, then the financial system will be vulnerable to that risk and could be very fragile in the end. And climate change has such attributes that would make it qualify for a financial system risk, because it could indiscriminately influence financial institutions if they are not aware of it and not prepared for it. So this is why many financial supervisors endeavor to address climate risk to the financial system right now, while quantifying it is still a difficult task. In essence, the financial system's preparedness to climate change needs to be enhanced in an orderly manner. Well, to do so, risk identification and risk measurement would be the starting point. And the prerequisite for this is the data and information for such identification and measurement. And this is where the TCFD plays a vital role by encouraging the improvement in the level of climate-related disclosure by the corporate sector. And once risks are identified and properly measured, Each financial institution must act to address them by reducing its exposures to risks or engaging directly or indirectly with risks involved and effectively reducing their threats, or enhancing its loss absorbing capacity by building up its own capital. So, in those ways, the financial system could be strengthened as against the climate change.
For investors, insurers, and lenders to manage their financial risks, they need to accurately price risks and opportunities relating to each company into their business into their investment decisions. In order to do this, they need consistent and comparable information from every company, focusing on possible financial impact of climate change. Consistent and comparable information disclosure requires a good understanding of the situation of the company and possible future scenario for risks and opportunities. The TCFD recommendations can be a good foundation framework for gaining understanding and learning how to communicate this understanding with stakeholders, including investors. If all companies can give investors the ability to accurately price climate change risks and opportunities into their investment decisions, then climate change can be effectively integrated into the allocation of the capital across the financial system. Climate change is not just a long-term risk. The effects are being seen more and more every day. Although sudden reallocation of the capital have their own risks, it's vital for companies to understand the risks that could affect them as soon as possible, and for them to communicate these to investors without delay so that sudden reallocation of capital are not needed. Just integrating climate change risk into investment decision is not enough. Investors and companies also need to have a constructive dialogue on how to respond to climate-related risks and opportunities. Investors can also use the TCFD recommendation to understand which issues are most relevant for their investee companies. The more dialogue there is, the stronger the role of the financial system can be. As a stock exchange, we are doing our best to facilitate this dialogue. When we say integrating risk into investment decisions, we mean, of course, asset managers, but also asset owners. Asset owners have a responsibility to reflect the view of their beneficiaries. But in order to know what the beneficiary wants, they have to actively seek information on their expectations. On the other hand, investors also have a responsibility to make their voice heard on the topic they feel strongly about, such as climate change.